Okay, guys, you're very welcome to our first webinar during Fit for All week. This evening, we're going to have a general discussion on inclusive fitness in Ireland. We've brought together a panel from representatives from across the inclusive fitness sector within Ireland. So I'm going to give the guys a bit of a brief introduction. So first up is Mark Barry from IWA at the National Rehabilitation Hospital. Mark, do you want to give us a bit of a background into your experience within inclusive fitness?
Yeah, thanks very much, Oran. Yeah, Mark's my name. I'm basically, I'm working for the Irish Wheelchair Association since 2003, originally as a sports development officer from about 2003 to 2019. And then last year I started a new role with my organisation as a liaison role with the National Rehabilitation Hospital, which still involves much around the area of inclusion and sport and physical activity and leisure centre inclusion, all that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, my background is in sport from a young age. I'm involved in disability sport since the age of 7, when I would have joined the Irish Wheelchair Association for the first time. So I suppose that's kind of part of my DNA, and ever since I've been growing up, I've always been thinking sport and inclusion all the time. So it's nice to be working in the area as well.
Yeah, it's great, Mark. Thank you. Paul Smyth.
Thanks, Roran. Thanks for the invitation. Paul Smyth here up in Donegal. I've been operating this facility here now for about 3 years. That's Paul Smyth Inclusive Health and Fitness, and the idea behind it, it's providing fitness opportunities for everybody, regardless of age or disability. And I suppose the reason I got into this was going back to my schoolboy days. My best friend was in a car accident and dramatically changed his life. So that has stuck with me all my life. I'm finally in the position to do something about it. So yeah, very involved with a lot of disability organisations such as the IWA and various other organisations, local board partnerships, and just doing as much as possible to promote the opportunities that are available to everybody out there, regardless of your ability or disability.
That's great, Paul. Thank you very much. And Pauline Casey?
Yeah, so I'm Pauline Casey. I'm a Sports Development and Sports Inclusion Disability Officer in Waterford Sports Partnership, and I'm also a tutor for Cara, and one of the courses that I deliver is the Inclusive Fitness course as well. I've been working as a SIDO probably for the last 6 years, but I've 11 years experience within the Sports Partnership, and my responsibilities are disability programs and women's sport programs.
Great, thanks Pauline. And last there now is Geraldine Lavelle.
Hi, yeah, my name's Geraldine Lavelle. I had a spinal cord injury in 2013. I had always been a very health conscious and fitness involved individual all my life. So I guess I really didn't want this to change once I acquired a disability. So therefore I searched different activities I could engage in and try to remain physically challenged challenges, look for different challenges, as it were. Last year then I secured a €10,000 grant with the European Cultural Foundation, and I developed a website, abilityforthisfitness.com. So this I used to post people's stories about what activities they remained involved with, and it's a platform really to help all those looking for ideas and trying to remain active.
Great, Geraldine, thanks very much. And I've actually been on your website quite a bit, and there's really powerful stories there and really great work being done. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Pauline, we're going to focus on the first section here now around importance of inclusive fitness for people with disabilities. So from your perspective as working as a SIDO down in Waterford and your knowledge of the SIDO network in general, how important is inclusive fitness for people with disabilities, and what impact have you seen on the ground as a SIDO?
Yeah, I suppose inclusive fitness is of huge importance, not just from a physical activity point of view, but from a social point of view, from a sense of belonging into the community and kind of finding that place where the person fits. So from my experience within Waterford, I suppose it's of huge importance, but particularly when that facility comes to you and they want to be inclusive themselves as an overall facility rather than you pushing it on them, that they're ready to now be inclusive. They see the need there, they see the demand coming in the door, and they want to be part of that. And I think that makes a huge difference for that person who's going into the facility or engaging in that class. that facility is ready and open to it as well, you know. So I think it's really, really important.
Like getting them ready. What type of things have you done to kind of support people and their readiness to open their doors to people with disabilities?
So I suppose just recently, what we've done here in Waterford, we had a girl with a visual impairment who wanted to join one of the local gyms, and it's quite a large local gym. And the facility have signed up for the inclusive fitness training, which they're going to do in the next couple of weeks. And that was their first step. But the other thing that we've done was kind of bridge that gap there for the individual going into the facility as well, by doing kind of a 6-week one-to-one with one of the fitness instructors. So that fitness instructor took her through the range of classes that were on offer to get her comfortable with the facilities, that she could find her way around independently. She was comfortable with the machines, she was comfortable with the terminology, and knew the structure of how everything kind of ran. As a result of doing those kind of 6 sessions that she'd done with that instructor, she has now joined that gym. So now she is part of the mainstream gym, and it's just that very small little change of, you know, 6 hours basically got her in to be a gym member. It's very little time in comparison.
Yeah, and I suppose having that person there who was open to the engagement of that, and having the patience to work with that person one-to-one, and then obviously the result is positive for everyone, a new membership and a person with a disability involved in the gym then as well.
And I think it was really good that we identified that key person there who, I suppose, number one, didn't have the experience, but, you know, was good to say, look, I don't have the experience, but I'm willing to learn. Had been engaging with myself over the 6 weeks, just looking for a little bit of advice. We had met with the participant and got advice off of her about what she liked, what she didn't like, what was good for her. We walked through the venue and looked, you know, at the rooms and lighting and what was the best lighting for her. So we listened to what, you know, worked for her really well, and I suppose really developed that program around her needs. But again, if you didn't have the facility on board who was open to it, and having that instructor or tutor who was willing to learn and who was open to the idea of it, the program wouldn't have worked, or that kind of bridging gap wouldn't have worked between joining the gym and so on.
Yeah, great point, Pauline. And being open, I suppose, is the first step, and then you can work off, as you described really well, all the process that you went through to get to that final stage. So great, thanks for that, Pauline. Mark, we're going to move on to you, and I suppose the same question around the importance of inclusive fitness, but from the environment that you're working within in the National Rehabilitation Hospital. So the importance that plays within the hospital for the patients that you're working with, but also then when they move out into the community again. Does inclusive fitness still play a part in their rehabilitation and their re-engagement back into their community?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a major factor in the NRH. There's a massive kind of focus on fitness and inclusive fitness and keeping as fit as you can. So the patients in there typically have all their different therapies on during the day and sometimes in the early evenings, such as physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech and language, that's just a few of them. But outside of that, then there's the sports department down there, which you've seen yourself, Oren, and also there's therapeutic recreation as well, which we started providing for as well. So there's a range of different activities that complement the therapies that are already there. So like if you were down in the gym now, you'll see this new gym, this new state-of-the-art sports hall, which can cater for bocce, wheelchair basketball, wheelchair rugby. There's a climbing wall in there. I've seen patients who are ambulant climb the wall, and I've seen patients who have a physical disability who are wheelchair users, and they're belaying up the wall and stuff like that there. And then there's a shooting range. There's a fully inclusive gym, which a lot of my background in IWA, which we'll come to later on, I suppose, when we're chatting about inclusive fitness and gyms, it's a state-of-the-art inclusive fitness centre, and it really is. It's the top of the range. So they have a huge focus on that. And then outside of that, then there's therapeutic recreation, such as things like, table tennis, bocce, cue sports, like, they do things like outdoor gardening, music therapy, all that sort of stuff. So they really cater for everything, and they believe in it, and they have done for a long time as well. So you would say things like, for the last 8 years, there's been a National Rehabilitation Hospital sports championships. Unfortunately, can't happen this year for obvious reasons, but that's always on the calendar. They're away every kind of Easter time, I think it is, close to Easter, for the Interspinal Unit Games. So there's always a focus on healthy living, healthy eating, and being ready to be discharged as well, and have access to your local sports inclusion disability officer, have access to your local accessible gym. So, you know, strong links with yourselves and Cara in terms of the Fit for All program. So it really is, it's catered for, and it's understated, but there is knowledge about it out there. And thankfully that comes from, I suppose, stakeholders interacting with each other all the time. But yeah, there's a big focus, I would believe, there in the NRH on fitness and inclusion. And that's part of a big part of my role with IWA and the liaison role with the NRH. So it's going in the right direction, and it has done for some time as well.
Yeah, that's great, Mark. Really great insights. I'll just mute you there, maybe, Mark. Really great insights, Mark. And just in terms of the connection with the sector, when the patients do, for the first time ever in Ireland now, there's a dedicated sport inclusion disability officer in each of the sports partnerships across the country, funded by Sport Ireland. So that's really powerful. And, you know, the patients now, when they go back into their local community, they can re-engage in sport and maybe get that connection, as Pauline described earlier, around getting people involved. So there's really good opportunities happening across the board there. Geraldine, we're going to move on to you now, and really we're going to move on now as well to how to engage people with disabilities in sport and inclusive physical activity. From your experience, what are the key things that encourage you to take part in sport and physical activity, and what, in general, for people with disabilities, what are the key things that people should be aware of to encourage them to be more active, or what's the key message that people need to hear?
Well, I suppose a big factor for me was in the NRH. Actually, I used to love when Mark Barry used to come in once a week or once every fortnight, and we would play wheelchair basketball, or we try a different sport, and it was all around building confidence, I suppose. So understanding that you could still become involved and still make friends and have social outlets through sport. And it was just a great de-stressor, really, because, you know, you're trying to cope with all these overwhelming emotions and maybe, you know, stressors that you didn't have before. Well, I know when I didn't have a disability. And so it was all looking for these new ideas around how I could still remain involved in sport. And I suppose my confidence was built in the NRH that I could still remain active, and it was a major part of my recovery, because, you know, it was building strength day by day, and as you physically became stronger, you mentally grew as well. Yeah. And then when I went out into the community, I moved to Sligo. I had the confidence then to go out and try and source different sports myself. So I took up for the first year I did horse riding. So it was adapted horse riding. We had to have a different sort of a saddle. I tried supping, sit down water paddling. I've tried kayaking. I tried wheelchair basketball. I daily go out and do my push. There's a path. It's like a 5 kilometer near my home. So like, it's all about remaining active. And then this also helps like with secondary challenges of disabilities, like pressure sores, or whether it be weight gain, or, you know, all those challenges you may come up against. But definitely remaining active has really been a fundamental part of my recovery.
Yeah, great. So it's benefited you in more ways than just through the sport, but also functionally as well, and just an everyday life task. Yeah. I suppose it's created more independence maybe for you as well. You know, you're able to do
and build strength.
Yeah, great. Paul,
definitely. So I've learned.
Sorry, Jenny, go ahead.
No, sorry. Just about transferring, build strength and confidence in being able to self-transfer, which is huge part of independence.
Great.
Yeah,
thanks.
Sorry.
Paul, we're going to move on to you, and just in terms of, again, engaging people with disabilities. I know you talked about your gym in Donegal. I'm very aware of it as well, and I know the inclusive philosophy you have within the gym. In terms of when you were setting up the gym, what were the key things around the promotion of your activities, engaging with people with disabilities? What were the key things that you considered when you were setting up the gym and continue to do now as you're more established?
I suppose where I did actually get a lot of good advice is your own course, inclusive fitness training. Just looking at the certificate up on the wall here, it was fantastic. You know, not knowing how to react around people with a disability, I would always just I see the person. If the person has a disability, but I always see the person. But then not knowing, is that, you know, are you allowed to say that? Are you allowed to say, oh God, you have a disability, you're in a wheelchair, how did that happen? Or is that taboo? And knowing, yeah, you're allowed to say that. So having a very, you know, that course taught me so much, not just in terms of accessibility, in terms of, you know, an actual gym itself, but, you know, how to speak to people and that it's okay to talk to the person. So I suppose a very open approach, completely open, you know, whether you can walk in through the door, wheelchair, crutches, whatever, you know, everybody's treated the exact same. So I suppose the approach, the open door approach is a huge one for me. Accessibility, making sure that, you know, if I'm going to offer a service, that I can actually back it up, you know, things aren't too awkward. And believe it or not, I'm actually on the top floor of a public building and I'm incredibly accessible. Okay, from you arrive at the front door, you know, there's, fortunately the building I'm in, you're able to push buttons, doors open for you, there's lifts, wide doors, no trip hazards, audio visual cues, you know, so just being, you know, if you're going to provide the service, I think, you know, you don't have to go to the top of a very open floor behind me. I believe in functional training, using your own body as much as possible. So, you know, making sure that you can back up the program that you want to provide, that you are accessible, the person can, in a very stress-free way, arrive at your facility, progress through the building, into your gym, and, you know, be comfortable with me as well. Make sure that any programs I put together, you know, that there's a theme to them, that there will be benefit to the participants. You know, you've got to look at the circumstances. I say I do a lot of work with the IWA. But I remember the very first time I went to their facility here in Letterkenny and walked in, and majority of the participants in the IWA were walking around, and I had this misconception, Irish Wheelchair Association, you know, so usually the rulebook, the plan goes out the window immediately. You know, it's like, okay, so here we have, you know, 3 users in wheelchairs, 2 power users, 2 people walking around, 1 guy who's blind, but you know, an international footballer, you know, so I don't ever judge anybody when I walk into it. Always get the brief, same thing, but be very open-minded. Treat everybody as you find them, but always make sure that there's a benefit to it. You can benefit somebody in the room. I'm a very great believer in keeping it simple. You know, usually I'll walk into a room with bands in my hand. Okay, what I can do with bands would blow your socks off, you know, but getting people to maybe pick up a few tips where they can maybe take something away, go home, and maybe practice movements at home as well. Where you don't physically need a gym. That's great, being able to get into a gym. As Mark says, I'm very jealous of the facility he described. But you know, being able to leave somebody with something that they can take home and work out at home and practice. Maybe you're seeing them weekly. You know, Pauline talked about that 6-week program. I'd like to think that maybe that client that was there for the six 1-hour sessions was maybe something she could have took home and said, right, I don't know what her situation was, but was there something she could take home with her, something that would benefit her, that she could keep going at home? Oh God, I could talk to you for ages about.
They're fine. It's really good information. You know, a lot of key things I've taken out of there, Paul, was just making simple changes and understanding the needs of the person. Like particularly that group that you described. I think you said there was 2 wheelchair users, 3 people on their feet, and somebody with a visual impairment, was it? So understanding each of their individual needs, but then adapting your programming and your delivery style possibly as well to meet their needs. Great. I know you could talk all night, and we would love to talk to you all night, but we'll get a chance to kind of dip into that more during the webinar today as well. What I want to move on to now, and it's basically a general discussion, is around the barriers for people with disabilities to engage in sport, physical activity and fitness. And really just to have a discussion among ourselves around what are the main barriers that we perceive, you know, to see in our own roles within this area, and maybe some examples of how you guys have overcome some barriers for the people that you work with, or maybe it might be an individual barrier for yourselves as well. Pauline, I might just go to you first there, if that's okay, see if there are any barriers from your perspective that you've...
I suppose looking at Waterford, and I suppose from the experience we have here, the biggest barrier is the location of participants and how everyone is so dispersed throughout the county in lots of rural places where there's a lack of transport to get them to a facility independently. I suppose that's what is the biggest thing for us. Our venues will be another huge challenge, particularly in the West Waterford, kind of Dungarvan area. Venues are very, very limited in terms of accessibility. There's really only one public venue there that has now become accessible due to some SIDO funding that we would have got through Sport Ireland 2 years ago, where we actually put in that accessible toilet. which now allows us to run more programs within the area. However, the barrier is COVID has now stopped that, so been able to, it's not open yet for lots of reasons. Similarly, within the city area as well, the facility that would be, I suppose, the most accessible, and I suppose, kind of, it's easy to reach from the motorway and that as well, but in terms of public transport, it's not there yet.
Okay.
So I think services are very much reliant on transport. Individuals are very much reliant on transport from an alternative to bring them to it. So that's the biggest barrier for us within Waterford, I think, really, is your venues and the access to those venues.
Great, yeah, that's really good. And in terms of other barriers, I suppose from your perspective, Paul, of working directly with people in the gym setting, are there any particular barriers that you would have identified that was problematic for you maybe in the past and now you've overcome them?
Yeah, I would have been contacted quite often by people's PAs or assistants, and I suppose the barrier, maybe the person with the disability might have this idea that, you know, they can't train in the gym because of their disability. You know, that excludes them from that. And I found quite often what I've said to the PAs, if I can get talking to the client themselves, to say, listen, come on over, have a look at the place. I'll have a break for half an hour. Let's sit down, have a cup of coffee, have a look around. Just chat to me, have a look around and see what you think. And I'll give you a few examples of what's available. So sometimes, you know, the client might think that's not an appropriate place for me until they actually get in here, you know, because Pauline touched on several issues that I face as well, you know, accessibility and transport and travel. But with the clients themselves, yeah, barriers, sometimes it's the individual themselves. And that's not just for people with disabilities. We all have, you know, that mind fog thinking, I can't do this, you know, I can't do this. And perhaps more so if you have a disability. But I think, you know, if you can get the person to the place, be it here or wherever, you know, and just say, look, this is what's going to happen. This is the place. And quite often I go to facilities. You know, if you can't come to me, you know, Pauline will probably know this with people she works with as well. Sometimes it's easier for me to go to the likes of the IWA or acquired brain injuries, to go down to their locations, because you guys can bring them all together to a central place, and then it's easier for me to come there. Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, I would say that the individual perception itself would be a big barrier. You know, if you can just tell them, you know, it'll always be appropriate to their needs, it will benefit them in the long run, and try and win them over in that way.
Geraldine, in terms of your own participation in inclusive fitness and activities, was there anything that was majorly difficult for you to overcome in terms of barriers, you know, and what support did you have there to overcome them if they existed?
Yeah, I did come up against quite a few barriers, I suppose, starting off. For example, the horse riding was in Ballymote, that's just outside Sligo town, about 20-25 minutes. So I wasn't driving at the time, and I just wondered how I would get out there. But I contacted my local IWA, and they actually set me up with a few hours a week, bringing me to the venue, waiting for me and bringing me home. So that was brilliant. I mentioned the barrier of, I suppose, equipment while at the horse riding. So we had to come up with we came up with a temporary solution, but I suppose long term it wasn't really feasible. The backrest we sort of adapted, so we put in for grant funding for that, because it was quite expensive. But when it didn't materialize, I suppose that was really a barrier that the horse riding company didn't really see a way around. So I then decided to look for other sports maybe closer by that I didn't need transport. So that's when I decided to check out I'm right beside Lough Gill, so that's when I contacted people with the kayaking and the water sports, because it was nearby and I suppose transport wasn't an issue. But then I would have a limited hand grip or dexterity, so that was another barrier, like holding oars and kayaks and one to kayak oars. So we had to adapt gloves and adapt seats on the supboard, you know. But where there's a will, there's a way, and if you are willing to do it and you bring yourself to the venue, to the person, you know, people are willing to work with you if they see that you really want to get involved. And that's what I've really, I suppose, really respected and enjoyed, meeting the people who are willing to help you and they want to see you staying active and getting involved, and you know, they go out of their way to help you, which is amazing. So there is ways, there's volunteers through sports partnerships. I was able to try out the basketball, and I used to have a lovely girl, actually, she was in the college, she was a volunteer, and she used to bring me back and forth to the wheelchair basketball, and we actually stayed quite friendly, you know.
Yeah.
So these people are just amazing that you meet along the way, like, and it's wonderful to see.
I think we're lucky that we live in Ireland and we do have that great community spirit, you know, in all parts of our country, which is great. And I think we've seen that a lot during the last number of months, and the restrictions and the difficulties that we've all faced. And I think it's really coming strong in terms of that community feel and looking out for each other. And I think you're right, Geraldine, as you were saying there, where there's a will, there's a way, and like you'll find solutions as long as you're determined to get there, and you know, you're willing to adapt your style or your approach to things.
And yeah, just don't be negative, just try it, just get out there and try, really. That's the main message, I think, for everyone, really.
I think if we don't learn anything else out of today, I think that's a really good message for everyone to take home.
Yeah, I think that
go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
I just think that's really powerful what Geraldine's saying there, you know, about barriers. When I was younger, and even in my early years in the job, and especially when I was younger as well, like a lot of the barriers were attitudinal and physical. And to hear Pauline and Paul and then Geraldine just finishing off there around like having the confidence as someone with a physical disability to know what you want and to go and aim for it, and you know, eye on the prize, and that sometimes the person with the disability has the solutions. And in terms of like my own work with the patients in the NRH, some of the barriers are actually just knowledge of knowing that there's SIDOs out there, knowledge that there's knowing that IWA Sport is there, that Spinal Injuries Ireland is out there, there's inclusive leisure centres out there, a Fit for All programme by CARA, resources by all these different organisations that we're talking about. And sometimes it can be as simple as that, as having the knowledge to know that there's a new life out there after, you know, a situation where someone might acquire their disability, or that they're indeed born with their disability, but that there is so many resources out there that weren't there 10, 15, 20 years ago. So to celebrate that and to acknowledge it, and that's really good, and then you can keep moving forward. But I just thought that the way Geraldine was speaking there after your other two guests was really empowering for other people who are new to their disability to know that there are resources that exist out there, and they exist right now, you know, and to have the knowledge to access them. So I just think that was really, really that kind of resonated with me.
Just put you on mute there again, Mark. That's okay. It definitely resonated with me as well, Mark, and it is a key message. There's, in terms of this sector, we haven't probably been as resourced as well as we are now at the moment ever in the country, like, and it's great. And I think it's just getting people to engage in those resources now and ensuring that they're reaching out to the likes of Pauline, as a SIDO, likes yourself and the NRH as well, and everyone really that works within the sector, just to ensure that there's no people within Ireland that have a disability now that shouldn't have an activity that they want to choose and they want to take part in within, you know, a certain distance of their home that's accessible for them. And that's really, really great. And it's something I know CARA as an organisation and everybody in that sector has been working towards for a long time, and we're continuing to work towards that, and we will over the next couple of years. I suppose one of the things that's probably impacted a lot on that over the last number of months has been COVID-19, and I'm sure we've all heard it from top to bottom at this stage, but I suppose it is important to touch on it in terms of the impact it has on people with disabilities, and particularly with their participation within sport and physical activity. In terms of the positives that came from COVID, have any of you come across something positive out of it, or has there been any positive for you?
I think you touched on it there, Mark. It's about the knowledge, and you touched on it, the resources. I think over the last couple of months, the amount of organisations that have connected together to combine their resources, to share their resources, has been phenomenal. And I suppose I can really see that from a SIDO position here in Waterford. The amount of contact I have with other SIDOs, with other national governing bodies, I suppose everyone really collectively coming together to say, what have you got? What have you got? Can we have this? Can we share that? And it was something that was probably never there before. And when we kind of delved into it, we discovered how much was out there, and how much we should have been using and tapping into and starting to share that information with organisations and with members. But I think that's even grown since then, and Oren, you'll probably back me up on that, when we started even looking at the In This Together campaign and the booklet that we were putting together, the amount of resources. I think we had a 70-page document
Yeah, it's quite a few
that we could send out to people, and we were told, cut this down to 3 or 4 pages. But what do you cut, what do you not cut? But you know, the information is there. It's just trying to access it and let people know where it is as well. I think it's the thing, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. And I think you're right. There is loads of resources out there, but it's getting the right ones to fit the right people, I suppose, in the right context. But you're right. I think there has been a huge, from definitely around the side of network and the sports organisation. I think there's been a real coming together of everyone and a real sharing of resources and sharing of ideas as well, which is really important. Has there been any other positive for anyone else within the group?
I know for myself, at the start of the year, I was involved in various programs where I was leaving my facility and going to various other facilities because it was easier to bring groups of people together. You know, various disability organisations, and then I think it was Friday the 13th of March, the world changed. And then after that, you know, I think everybody was cancelling, everybody was shutting down, everybody was unsure what to do. And within 2 weeks, we had the Zoom classes up and running, especially for those organisations, because when I would go down to those groups of people, they were being bussed in or driven in, or, you know, brought from various locations around Donegal to a central place. And then with the restrictions that came in, those people were effectively at home or in care homes or wherever, and they weren't getting to see each other at all. And when I was contacted by, you know, one organisation, then I put it out to all the other organisations that could be carry on the classes, same time, same evening, but through Zoom, give everybody a few weeks to get set up. And I said, you know, I had a funny feeling. I said, this is going to be as much a social aspect as it will be physical. Like, you can imagine what the first class was like. The whole place just fell apart. You know, you had 10 little windows around your screen, and everybody was talking to everybody, and they were just buzzing. So after that, we made a deal that the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes, you guys could just talk and catch up and do your thing. And it was as much, you know, mind your mental health as your physical health. So, you know, it was fantastic. So I think it actually brought people closer together from that aspect of it.
I think you touched on something very important there, Paul, and it's, I suppose, the social benefit of exercise and being involved in a group activity. I think that's really impacted a lot on people during COVID, because you were kind of, you know, isolated away from people. I think, you know, to continue to have that so I know it's online and it's probably the best that we can do now for now, but still to create that space, I think just is really important, that people can just have a chat and have a bit of fun before the activity starts and afterwards as well.
One of those groups is actually called the Socialites, you know, but that's what they're called, the Socialites. But now they were actually doing it from home, and it was fantastic. We're actually starting it again now next week. So
great, that's fantastic.
And one of the departments in the NRH, the therapeutic recreation department, during COVID, because a lot of the patients were locked down, because clearly the hospital wants to keep everybody safe, staff and patients, and they're doing a great job of that. Well, then patients were in there. Typically, you know, if you're a patient in there, you could go home for the weekend or on an evening. That would be allowed, and would not only be allowed, it would be encouraged as part of your rehab. But a lot of the patients are kind of locked down for safety reasons. So we would have provided a therapeutic recreation at the weekends, and it still happens on like a Tuesday and a Thursday evening, and some Saturdays and Sundays. So, you know, anything from some sports, individual sports, social distance sports, and recreational activities, the music therapy and all that sort of stuff, gardening, just outdoor recreation, different things like that there. So they were really focused in on making sure that the patients, who all were isolating, were all hopefully getting to do something during off-peak times from therapies and different things like that there. Because like anywhere, you know, it's tough isolating, and it's really tough on the patients, you know, isolating as well, because, you know, they're having their interactions with their family members through Zoom and Microsoft Teams and WhatsApps and all that sort of stuff there. So, you know, they've been so good and so decent and so patient as well that, you know, it's really important that there's still activities going on as often as it can happen. And I think the NRH and their staff have done a really good job there as well. And I think the patients would say the same thing as well.
Yeah. Geraldine, is there any new activities that you've taken part in during the lockdown, or is there any, how you adapted your own physical activity?
Yeah, I was doing my own workouts at home. I have, I don't know if you can see behind me, but the piece of equipment is my stand-up walking frame. But that's great for cardio or whatnot. I was still going out, to be honest, getting my exercise, wearing my mask, washing my hands, and spraying down my chair when I came back in, because I know we were meant to be cocooning, but personally for me, the physical activity really helps with the whole mental aspect of things and de-stressing. So I had to get out and get my fresh air and my walk. But I was doing my own at home as well. But other than that, staying active really as much as possible.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great, guys. I wanted to focus on the positives of COVID initially, but obviously there's been a lot of difficult things particularly for the fitness industry and people with disabilities in general. In terms of adapting now, also we're going to be in that situation where we've just got onto level three overnight. So it looks like we're going to be probably in restrictive mode for a good while. In terms of adapting, in terms of gyms or leisure centres or the fitness sector in general, what things should we be looking towards in the next number of months to kind of adapt our offerings during COVID? Pauline, I might get you to answer that one first, if that's okay.
Yeah, I suppose what we've started to do is to go outdoor activity and small groups in the outdoors, and we're working with services more on a one-to-one basis as opposed to having an offering out there. So every service is different, their needs are different, their rules are a little bit different in terms of, is there any underlying conditions that their service users have? Are they cocooning? So we're working very much on a one-to-one basis with them at the minute. I suppose some of the other stuff that we would have done to try and get them active was give them packs. So we put together some activity packs that we put into each of the services, and we asked them, in terms of their space, how much space they had, what would be suitable for them. So we gave in things like bocce kits, speed stacks, some polybath sets, so that the staff are now doing that with the service users.
Yeah.
I suppose the downside to all of that is we're really missing that social element. And we would have done a lot of walking activities where we would have brought maybe 50, 60 participants together. We would have engaged them then with some of the older adult groups that we would have had, and it was very much a social event that they really look forward to over a couple of weeks in the summer and in the winter time. I suppose that's one thing that I don't know how we can replicate with our service users. I was certainly missing them and missing the chat and the banter that I would have with them, and you're touching in with the staff and seeing how they're doing and making sure that they're okay. And even the ones that I have had to have contact with since, it's fantastic to see them back, and you can kind of see that they've missed that social element as well, and that aspect has been really missing from their lives. So I think that's something that we consciously have to work into our plan going forward, that if there was a way of incorporating a social piece there, it's really beneficial. I think that's even more than the activity that they need at the minute. The activity will get them there, but that social interaction is something that they're really missing at the minute.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Pauline. I think that social interaction, and that's the biggest attraction maybe for some people. They can get engaged because they know it's going to be part of a group and they will meet other people and have fun together. So yeah, I think you're right. We do need to put some plans in place to keep that connection going, however difficult it is, within the guidelines and within the restrictions. Paul, I'm going to lastly touch on you for this one, if that's okay. The fact that you're a gym owner, and I know we're in level 3 now at the moment, so that's probably closed down the gym for you. In terms of the long-term picture for the fitness industry, it's going to be difficult, and how do you see it kind of adapting over the next few years?
I suppose Donegal's been at level 3 now before you guys, so yeah. So used to it. Classes have all been suspended, but one-to-one sessions can continue. And I suppose where I've really felt it is a couple of my inclusive clients would be high risk.
Yeah.
So where they could still come to me on a one-to-one basis, even all the measures I could possibly take and put in place, masks, visors, gloves, there's still that element of risk there, depending on the person as well, where you're going to have to be really hands-on with them. So seeing those people not being able to take part, it comes back to what Pauline said, the social part of it is really difficult. unfortunately, where we live, this part of the world, weather plays a huge part. Here I don't have the facility to go outside, under cover. However, I would be all for promoting outdoor activities through the local sports partnership. Even my son and myself have taken part in surfing. We just started surfing there on Monday for juveniles with ASD. So, as many outdoor activities as possible. Look, it's challenging times ahead for maybe the traditional gym. I don't fall into that bracket, fortunately enough. It's more studio classes and individual training. And then online, as it's here. It's proven itself during the past 6 months. It's going to prove itself going forward. I just had a colleague of yours, Pauline from Donegal Sports Partnership, email me there now, looking for Facebook Live classes starting next week. Challenging times ahead, Oren, but listen, we're all very adaptable. As I mentioned earlier on, if there's anything we can pick up and do it at home, self-help is a big one as well. Help yourself as much as possible. But I think the online world is going to help social interaction, especially for our inclusive users going forward.
Yeah. I think you touched on a key thing there, is just being adaptable and responding to the situation. I suppose we've all had to do that a lot over the last number of months. And come back to Geraldine's point earlier, just if there's a will, there's a way. And I suppose being creative and adaptable, particularly in the space that we're working with, and I think that those are crucial things to take on board. Guys, thanks a million for your time so far. I just want to finish off with a bit of a fun and kind of an insight into yourselves. And it's really just, in terms of your own physical activity, what things do you guys enjoy taking part in? Or do you go to the gym? What are the things you enjoy doing when you're choosing what activities you're taking part in yourself? Mark, we might start with you there, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I coach and I play with a local wheelchair basketball team in Ballybrack down the road from us. So unfortunately, like many clubs, like many sports clubs, we're kind of we're on postponement at the moment because of COVID. So that's ruled that out. So my recreational activity outside of that is kind of chasing after a 3-year-old at the moment. So it doesn't replace basketball, but it's walks, and when we can get out local, down to Dunleary, down to the pier, that type of thing. And just going for brisk walks. There's not an awful lot else you can do by trying to stay fit outside of what you would normally do. So as Geraldine was saying there and alluding to, like, it's a big part of that is that your mental health. So to get out when you can, if it's dry or raining, like we all live in Ireland and we're coming into the winter, so we're all going to have to get out and make the best of it, because it's still going to be a tough time for another few months. So like yourselves, everybody's just doing their best. So that's mostly what I'm doing at the moment. When outside of work, is trying to get out for a few walks and have a bit of family time.
Yeah, sure. That 3-year-old's keeping you busy.
She certainly is keeping me well busy. I spend more time chasing her than keeping up with her. So anyways, she's I say there's a bit of a sports there's a bit of sports ability in the genes there. So hopefully that will stand in good stead. Yeah.
Paul, we'll go over to yourself there. I know you touched on you like a bit of surfing. Is there any other things you enjoy?
Oh, I'm not very good at surfing. One lesson. I suppose blessed living up here in Donegal. I'd be a few years ago I discovered obstacle course running, Spartan challenges. So I've been traveling all around Ireland and UK doing obstacle course challenges, Spartan races, not this year obviously. Kayaking, I've been kayaking this past few years, and again our coastline is just spectacular. Seeing Donegal from the water, looking back and exploring caves and sea stacks. It's just an amazing thing, and you can do it all year round, as long as you can swim.
Great, yeah. Thanks, Paul. Geraldine, we'll move on to you. I know you've touched on quite a lot of the things you do. Is there one in particular that you enjoy the most?
For me, I really enjoyed the kayaking, because I suppose it got me. I love water sports, the stand-up water paddling or sit-down water paddling, whichever you prefer to call it. I was still in my wheelchair, but the kayaking was great because it got me out of my chair, kind of down into the water, as you were. What started out with just loads of floats, kind of propping me up and whatnot, and gloves, my active hands gloves. So that made me accessible to the water, and I could do it indoors in the pool with through GMIT, the outdoor club in MIT, they actually have a 4-week, they run 4-week sessions. So they were the ones who actually assisted me with it. And then we moved it out onto the Loch Lana then during like the warmer months, but now it'll be great because you can use it indoor or outdoor really.
Yeah, great.
Do it indoor or outdoor.
So it makes it accessible all year round for you. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Pauline,
Yeah.
we'll move on to you now. Just I know you quite well. I know you're very active. Is there any? What's the main ones that you love doing?
I suppose just for myself, I suppose just going to the gym and getting into the gym, and for me that's that headspace. But I'm also involved with a lot of camogie at club level, but also at county level. So I'm quite lucky to be able to still go training with the girls. I'm part of the management team with them. So for me, that gives me that outlet to say, we're going training tonight, we've got a match this night, and we're building towards championship. So I'm one of the very lucky few that can still say sport is part of their life at the minute, even when we're at level 3. So I'm very, very grateful for that, especially now I am.
Guys, thanks a million for your time. Really appreciate it, and I appreciate you taking part in the webinar. Obviously, due to the restrictions, we've gone online with a number of activities during Fit for All Week, and I really appreciate your insights and the sharing of your knowledge that you've gone through today. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll re-engage with you at some stage in the future again. So all the best, and keep safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank you.